Back with Mid-Table Talk, Copa America Preview. Today we're talking USMNT. This is the golden generation of the team. The biggest hiccup with this roster is, of course, the coaching staff. With Greg Berhalter, I think there's a lot of naysayers with him. I am amongst that camp. I know he's a great man-manager. I know that the players support him. I know that they look up to him and they like his vision, but unfortunately, for my money, those tactics that he runs are not really suiting this group. Is there the talent in this player pool to win a Copa America? And I think, yes, there is. But I think we need a manager with a tactical vision that supports that and can really maximize the talent of these players, because at the moment, you see results with Greg Berhalter. Within CONCACAF, he's obviously something of an ace. You know, when you have this kind of talent, and you go through teams like Mexico, Canada, Jamaica, there are good teams in CONCACAF, you know, solid national teams, but it's not like anything crazy. You're not really facing many top 25, top 20, even top 15 national teams, if ever. Berhalter's record outside of CONCACAF is not the best. We saw that in the World Cup. We saw some tough results, big draws against England and Wales, which I wouldn't say are bad results. And then obviously the win against Iran was a gutsy result. It's what you need in a World Cup, but it's not anything compelling, I would say. There's never been a better time to be a U.S. men's national team fan with the guys coming through. But if you can't get the most out of those players, then it's kind of a wash. In the knockout stages against the Netherlands, Greg's tactics got exposed. And we've seen that in a lot of games against the bigger, better team, especially against Colombia in the pre-Copa friendlies. The U.S. got torn to shreds. It was not a very compelling performance whatsoever, and it was basically a full-strength 11. Obviously, there are some missing there, some squad rotation. One of the biggest ones is Serginho Dest being injured. Even so, I mean, Joe Scally played a really great game against Brazil, and that's another result to talk about, is the Brazil game, because it wasn't necessarily a change of tactics as much. It was more of a execution thing for me, and in many ways, I think Brazil underperformed. I don't want to take that as the quote-unquote win, as we do when, you know, the U.S. draws with a big team like England, or in this case, Brazil. I think that you got to be wanting more from that, especially when it's a Brazilian team that is somewhat underwhelming. I mean, Ronaldinho renounced them after the result. One of the biggest issues they have against these teams that can press well is the distribution out of the back, and obviously with the guy like Tim Ream, he is incredible with the ball at his feet. He's so composed, but then going back to Matt Turner, he's a really, really good shot stopper. I am a big Matt Turner fan, but his pass accuracy, especially with that long ball breaking the press, was quite poor in that Brazil game. And I don't want to knock the guy, because obviously he put up I think he put up 11 saves. It was the most since Tim Howard in that crazy game against Belgium. He had a really good shot stopping game, but as a tournament progresses, as you get into deeper games, those mistakes start to build, start to add on to each other, and eventually one of them might, you know, break the seal and put the U.S. in some dangerous situations. Expectations for this Copa, I think, are to make some noise. Pushing for maybe even a semifinal is possible, but realistically, I think there's a world where the U.S. finish second in the group and are out right away in the knockouts. Waiting on the other side of the bracket is the two teams that they just played in the pre-Copa friendlies in Brazil and Colombia. Those are two teams they did not beat, and especially in a tournament setting where these South American teams are a bit more seasoned, a bit more steeled, that's going to be very difficult. I don't know if this group has the makings to get gritty with a Brazil or a Colombia in a knockout game. But there is talent here, of course, and we can take a look at that through the squad. Taking a look at this roster, I think it's pretty much to be expected. There weren't a lot of notable omissions. I think the biggest one, of course, we spoke about earlier, Serginho Dest through injury. But names like Vasquez, Trusty were the only ones that I really saw come up. And those aren't guys that are typically national team mainstays. This is a pretty standard team. Christopher Lund is one that is a bit newer to this setup with Greg. Was not a part of that World Cup squad, but a lot of these guys were on the plane in Qatar, and you don't always get that continuity with national teams, so it's really good to have that unit stick together from tournament to tournament to sort of build tactics and build chemistry. Looking through the positions, I think we're pretty standard at goalkeeper now with the Turner, Horvath, Johnson rotation. I don't think you can go wrong with that. You know, Steffen's a name that comes up. He's kind of lost his place in the national side, and I don't really see him regaining it because you don't really need what he has. Turner's the shot stopper, obviously. Horvath is a great backup, great shot stopper as well. And then Sean Johnson, of course, more in there for a leadership role. One of the best MLS goalies ever. Only players that I can really think of for the goalkeeping position, maybe a guy like Gaga Slonina when he develops more. Really hoping that Slonina develops his feet and becomes sort of a ball-playing goalkeeper. That's not really a position we have at the moment, and I think that that's something that is really hurting in our system, especially when we do try to soak up pressure against these more advanced teams. I think defensively, it's pretty standard. I think Joe Scally's doing a good job stepping up. Serginho Dest plays a really big role in the U.S. national team, especially going forward. Is not the best defensive fullback. I don't think anyone's going to question that. But going forward, he's really good. He's great with both feet. I might get some shade for this, but I am a Shaq Moore truther. I am a big fan of Shaq Moore. I think he's got a lot to offer physically, defensively, but he can go forward too. I was just the other night watching this is some soccer sicko stuff. I was watching a Shaq Moore attacking highlights video. And there is a video, and there are highlights, and he can put in a ball. There's plenty of times for Nashville where he's put in a first-time ball or gotten on the overlap and made things difficult. And obviously the MLS is a different tactical and technical setup than you're going to be playing in a Copa America, but it's there. This is a standard midfield as well. I think the most interesting positional debate in that midfield, maybe apart from Gio Reyna, is going to be Johnny Cardoso and Tyler Adams. Johnny Cardoso has had a great season in Spain, and he's really good when he comes in and plays for the national side. And with Tyler Adams' injury concerns, I'm sure the minutes restriction will be lifted by the time they get into the group, but you can't be too sure. And if there is a need for rotation with Tyler Adams, then Johnny Cardoso, look no further. And we have seen Gio Reyna play in more of a deeper role, a bit less advanced. And I think that's a great spot for him as a sort of free roaming 8. Once he picks up the ball, he can drive with it, he can carry it. But I do think there's coverage all over the place in midfield and through attack. Pulisic is obviously the talisman for this team. My favorite player in the world, probably Tim Weah, is incredibly good for the U.S. national team. He plays as a wingback for Juventus. I saw some calls for him to get the call for wingback ahead of Joe Scally and maybe play a 3 or a 5 at the back. I don't think that's going to be very productive for the U.S. system, and I don't think Greg is ever going to stray away from his 4-3-3, so I can't see that happening. And I also think that Weah's service and speed, and honestly, his technical finishing, he's a great finisher for the U.S. You can't miss that on the right wing. As far as striker goes, Balogun is the obvious choice. It's just, I think he's had a difficult time adapting to Greg's system. It doesn't really suit him. He's not really a target man or a guy that really is going to dive for the penalty spot and try to get his head on the ball as much. He's more of a build-up guy. Can play with his back to goal really well, can carry the ball really well, and he's not really in this position to succeed there. I am curious to see how he is able to play against some of the lower ranked sides, especially in the group. Uruguay is going to be a test for this team, an absolute test. Balogun should be able to have some fun against Panama and Bolivia, getting a bit freer, hopefully receiving balls into his feet and not necessarily service into the box as much, and giving him some more space to roam and kind of create for himself, get comfortable in this tournament. I think Uruguay are not going to have trouble topping this group. That is a great team. They are talented through and through. They have stars in Europe with Valverde and Darwizzi. You know, they've got a lot of talent that's been through the national system for a long time, and they have a lot of players playing in some really competitive leagues in South America. That's a Uruguay team that I fear. I think they could make some noise. They could go far. I know John spoke about them in a previous video. As far as Panama and Bolivia go, those should be 6 points for the U.S. Again, in tournament play, you can never know. Things get gritty. A Copa America, again, although it is going to be on U.S. soil, this Copa is going to be a test of the U.S.'s resolve against these South American teams that are probably going to travel well and are going to bring a lot of atmosphere and grittiness to a game that I don't know if the U.S. has seen too much of in a tournament setting. It's a bit different in a World Cup, you know? It's a bit different in, obviously, a Gold Cup. Just CONCACAF is not always going to give you the full scope of what you might face, so it is going to be a task for them. I do see the U.S. making it out of this group, albeit in second place, and I think that's fine. When you have a team like Uruguay, you're not expected to beat them, and I think that kind of takes a bit of pressure off the U.S., but of course there is still pressure elsewhere. You're hosting a Copa America. This is your best generation of players ever, by far, in my opinion, and you need to make something happen. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Greg's shoulders as well. Taking a look at the starting 11, I think it's going to be pretty standard, what we've seen through friendlies. It's very similar setup to what we've seen through the World Cup as well. Just a few interchanged players, perhaps. Matt Turner in goal, he's nailed on. Center backs, it's going to be Tim Ream paired by Chris Richards. Left back, Anthony Robinson, no question. Right back, Joe Scally, who else? Are you going to start Shaq Moore? I'd be happy if they started Shaq Moore, honestly. As I mentioned before, I love Shaq Moore. But Joe Scally is, of course, the option there. And at a 6, I would say Tyler Adams, and then you go up to Yunus Musa and Weston McKennie as the 8s. Up top, Florian Balogun. Out left, Pulisic. Out wide, Weah. Standard. The changes I could see made, Cardoso could rotate through as that 6. You could see Gio Reyna either out on the wing, but I don't think he should play over Weah, or in as an 8, but I don't think he should play over Musa or McKennie, especially off form. If you introduce him later in a game to change things, shake things up, play as that free roaming player, that could work really well. I don't know if Greg has the tactical acumen to make that sort of change happen, especially in a pivotal moment, but he is a player that can come off the bench and impact the game in that way. If you're looking for a different profile through the front 3, Haji Wright can play off of the wing or through the middle, more so of a winger for Coventry, but can drift inside. Great finisher, scored in a World Cup. So there you have it, Group C. I could see the U.S. finishing second. If they top the group, I would be shocked, but stranger things have happened. Can they go far? I sure hope so. Thanks for tuning in to Mid-Table Talk. We'll be bringing you more action throughout the Copa America, throughout the Euros, and the Olympics. A big summer for MTT. I've been Will. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll leave you with Weston McKennie.